The game is very saturated right now. Everyone's making music. Think about how many rappers you know that even have tried using Facebook Business Manager. Very few. Think about how many rappers you know that sit around and think about color palettes for their Instagram account. Very few. It seems like it's impossible to stand out until you actually examine what it takes to stand out and realize that the vast majority of artists competing for the same space and competing for the same resources are not even trying to stand out. Shout out to all our listeners on Audio Max. Shout out to all our listeners on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Big audience on YouTube. Shout out to all of you. You probably subscribe to me too. So I really appreciate you. We always are talking about two things: artists empowerment and the Illuminati. Today we're going to focus on the artist empowerment side of the coin. I'm sorry, Dame. I'm sorry, man.
Today we got a cool discussion queued up. Before we jump into that, I want to let people know that we are about to start a case study. We are teaming up with Rich from Anywhere, and we are going to use an artist named Kaylin Raps, kind of a Facebook ads case study. So we want to show people the importance of empowering yourself to promote yourself, right? Because I think the number one question we receive is like, how do I promote myself, or who can I hire to promote my music? And the answer that I always give is like, you need to hire yourself. You need to figure this out yourself. You need to figure Facebook ads out yourself, because in the process, you'll learn a lot about your target audience, who they are, where they are, things like that. And you can empower yourself to promote the things that you need to promote. So we're going to be doing a case study with an artist named Kaylin Raps, who's about to go on tour and show people the power of Facebook ads. And Rich from Anywhere actually has a course on Facebook ads that we're going to, at least show people how it works first. And then if they want to partake in the course, then they'll be able to do so. So look forward to that. I just wanted to cue that up. We'll dive deeper into some of the details as we get going. But I think it's going to be a fun case study.
And we do field a lot of frustrated questions from artists. And, one of the narratives out there is that you just can't really break through the algorithms these days without having a ton of money or without cheating the algorithm somehow, which I'm always going to argue against, and I think you will as well, Dame. But with regard to the stigma around paid advertising, like how the Rich from Anywhere courses instruct, and what I've always talked about and what Mike Trampy always talks about, who was a guest last week, it's really not about spending tons and tons of money. I think when we start talking about paid advertising for artists, they're thinking major label kind of budgets, thousands of dollars a month spent just to stand out from all the noise. And I'm going to say something, you can believe me or not, but very few independent and unsigned artists are using paid ads, and even fewer of them are using them in a productive way. And so if you can figure out how to do it the right way, which just takes some time and some resources, you can stand out pretty easily in that realm of paid ads. You just can. You got to try it though.
And I don't know why anybody would look negatively towards like paid ads. Literally every business in the world is using Facebook to get more exposure for their products and to sell their products. So for us to be the one industry that looks negatively upon that, it seems quite idiotic to me.
Well, I know why, because there's this duality. We're always, as artists, we're always fighting this internal battle because our brain is like split into two opposing sides. One side loves the art and wants to be a purist about it and thinks that everything should be based on talent and merit. And on the other hand, we want to make money off of it. And we know that it's like we kind of resent ourselves for wanting money, and so we come up with all these convoluted ideas as to why we're not making money off of our music and why we don't even want to try. It's because of the lizard people and the gay agenda and all this other bullshit. And really, it's just because we haven't gotten off our ass and spent a month doing some pretty minimal research on how these advertisements work. So yeah, the ad systems, I'm always telling people, start small with your budgets, learn, do it all incrementally. And resources like Rich from Anywhere can help. And actually on Beat Club, if you're a producer watching this, on Beat Club, we do case studies too. We did a case study with Tundra Beats. That was Mike Trampy. The video is actually up on YouTube. It's a full video on Facebook and Instagram ads. And I'm not saying we're the reason that he has 100,000 plus YouTube subscribers and is making a living off of beats. But I did talk to him, and I know that those ads are a part of his overall strategy for success. So that was really cool to watch somebody go from never running ads at all to where they are now. So shout out to Tundra Beats, shout out to Mike Trampy. And if you want to join B Club and participate in these kinds of conversations and case studies and tutorials, musicentrepreneurclub.com is how you do it.
Yes, sir. All right, so I guess I'll kick things off. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned something called a revenue mix, and some people were confused in exactly what I was talking about. And I wanted to jump into some of the different revenue streams that artists are partaking in these days, and how to go about it. Maybe some of the more unconventional ones. When I mentioned revenue mix a couple of weeks ago, it was just what percentage of your revenue comes from certain places, right? So if you had, if you made $100 and 20% of it, $20 came from touring that year, then 20% of your revenue came from touring, and that's 20% of your revenue mix, right? So it was mixed of touring, maybe another 20% was publishing, maybe another 30% was merch, and then the other 30% was music sales or what have you, right? And for every artist, that might look different, depending on what they focus on, depending on what their strong suits are. Sponsorship dollars are hard to come by. It's even hard to come by for us, the Music Entrepreneur Club, because we're always looking for sponsors for our podcast, our tour, and things like that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sponsorship opportunities. Payne, have you had any success with sponsors in the past?
Yeah, I've definitely had. Yeah, I've had and I co-founded a nonprofit, so we're always looking for funding for that. We completely rely on funding pretty much, and then with my brand is DJ Payne One. Yeah, sponsorships for contests, brand partnerships, all of that kind of falls under the same category, and it's definitely something that I'd like to do more of, but because it is difficult. It's hard to find the right brand to work with that makes sense for both parties, and then figuring out what's a good agreement. What will benefit both sides,
right?
In terms of money, products, what the expectations are, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's something that I think a lot more artists should explore.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult in the beginning because obviously if somebody's going to sponsor you, what you're giving them in return is exposure. And if your platform is small, and you don't have that many fans, you're not getting that many views, it's going to be hard to communicate that value. But as you start to get traction, and maybe it's traction in a particular niche, and this is going back to why telling your story is so important, because let's say, for example, you're a big wrestling fan, right? You're a big WWE fan. And one of the way you communicate that, obviously you do music, but maybe you start a separate music WWE podcast. You really get entrenched in that niche, right? Or maybe you make a particular post on a weekly basis that's WWE Wednesdays or something like that. And you start now, because as that grows, you're going to get more people that are attracted to that niche as part of your community. So even if your numbers don't go crazy, a brand knows that all of the people that do rock with you also like wrestling as well. So there might be some opportunities to approach brands, maybe approach WWE eventually, or maybe a smaller wrestling company, or maybe some apparel that also shares the same audience. So you really need to be intentional early, because a lot of times this takes a long time to develop these relationships. Because even if you reach out to the WWE right now, obviously if you're small, they're probably maybe not even going to respond. But as you're showing growth and you're maintaining this relationship, there might be an opportunity. Say a video goes viral or you start to get some momentum, people there with that organization, they're familiar with you. Because again, these sponsorship opportunities, sometimes they take years to develop. But again, going back to telling your story, if you're entrenched in a passion point and you're communicating to your fans that you're genuinely and authentically appreciative of the WWE, and that's what you rock with, it's going to be easier to show a brand that it's an authentic affiliation, and you have people that genuinely rock with that niche. So I really just want people to understand that it takes a long time to develop sponsorship opportunities, but that you should start now. And that's why it's so important to really have an understanding of your brand and your passion points, so that you can come up with ideas to start positioning yourselves for opportunities like that in the future. And then when you do reach out to brand, what I typically do is I put together a proposal. If I find the person that's the decision maker for a particular brand, I reach out, I introduce myself, but then I send them a proposal. And what this proposal does is it outlines like who we are, what our stats are, what the benefits of working with us would be, what potentially we can offer. And hopefully we can start a conversation with this proposal. And then if there is a positive response, then we negotiate exactly what we'll do for their sponsorship and what they're giving in return, whether it's financial or whether it's maybe some product. All of the details will be in a sponsorship agreement that both you guys agree to, so that everybody's on the same page. And what I would encourage people to do when they do get a sponsorship opportunity, if it says post 2 times a week, I would post 4 or 5. I would go above and beyond whatever the sponsor is requiring of you, because you want it to be a longer term relationship. You want them to be satisfied with what you guys are doing. So that you can go back again, or you can make it kind of a monthly thing, right? I know Futuristic, the artist that I manage, he's currently being sponsored by a weed company, and he gets a monthly stipend and he has to do certain things throughout the month. So if they're happy with what he's doing, they're going to keep extending this monthly stipend, and that's what you want. You want a long-term relationship so that the money can keep coming, and as you grow, hopefully the money grows with it. So it's definitely there's opportunity there, but it's a lot of work, and you have to start early. You have to be intentional about how you're positioning yourself, how your messaging is, because these brands are going to want people that are genuinely affiliated with their niche. And so just be mindful of that in the beginning, and hopefully you can position yourself and have good communication with these brands and develop long-standing relationships.
Without consistency, without output, without engagement, you can't really offer a company anything. You can't really offer a brand partner anything. If you say, I post a couple times a month, and a brand partner says, all right, well, we want 3 posts a week, and you're not in the habit of doing so, that could be a disaster for you. The other thing too is if you have something regular going on, if you have a Freestyle Friday or a Wordsmith Wednesday, I'm just throwing stupid ideas out, but you know what I mean. If you have some kind of regular, reoccurring content that your fans know, comes out on a certain day, or there's this reoccurring, webisode that you release on YouTube, or you're just really good at engaging people, that's a really great entry point for having a conversation with a potential brand, because you can say, well, hey, look, every Wednesday this happens, and then in addition to having that consistency, You're learning about the stats, you're learning about the analytics, you know who's tuning in, and then you know what your value is, because you're going to the negotiation table. I talk with brands all the time, actually. I probably 20%, if not fewer, than the brands that contact me, I actually work with, because a lot of the times it doesn't make sense. I say, hey, we'll send you a free pair of headphones if you make a video talking about the headphones. I'm like, well, nah, I'm good. That's really not valuable to me and to my brand, because how can I incorporate your brand into mine in a more meaningful way? And once I do that, that value far exceeds your product donation, because I could just buy the headphones myself.
Right.
So how can we create a mutually beneficial situation? But that comes from knowing what my reach is. That comes from having done this for a long time and really examined the statistics and the analytics. So like Dame says, there's never it's never too soon to start exploring these possibilities and getting ready for when they come.
Yeah, you definitely want to position yourself now for the brands you would eventually want to work with. And in the meantime, just like there's a lot of up and coming artists, there's a lot of like up and coming apparel companies. Like, you don't need to, try to reach out to Nike right away. Maybe it's a local apparel company. It meshes with your brand and your messaging because you're from the same city. So that can help, tell your story by partnering with this apparel company that's local. And maybe it's not even financial in the beginning. It very, very seldom is it financial in the beginning of a relationship, especially as an artist hasn't really caught a lot of momentum yet. Maybe it's just an exchange of social media exposure, and that could be valuable as well. You just really need to be mindful of what your value is and not get lost in thinking that your platform is more valuable than it probably is. You have to learn to look through the eyes of a potential brand partner and really think about what is valuable to them. How could you add value to what they're doing? And hopefully they're doing the same, and you guys can work on a fruitful relationship.
We have a special guest on the podcast today. My mother, she's in the background. I'm invading her space because the internet in my studio is acting up. So,
Mama Payne.
She didn't. I don't think she wanted to. She's an unwilling guest. This is a good segue into what I wanted to talk about, which is another question that I think comes with a lot of baggage, which is it easy or hard for an artist to stand out, especially now in 2019 going into 2020? And I actually got an article sent to me by one of your colleagues, Jesse Kurzbaum. I didn't actually sign up to his list. I don't know how I'm getting his emails, but there's an article on LinkedIn by Amber Horsberg. It's called 33 Ways to Improve Fan Artist Engagement on Social Media, which is actually a really good article with a lot of practical solutions. It's not just 33, kind of fluffy, smile more, be yourself, post better content. It's actually really specific.
And we've had, and Amber was a guest on the MEC. It was a really dope session. She's super knowledgeable. She has her own newsletter that I think people should subscribe to. Recently met up with her for lunch. Super sharp, and always has something dope to say in her newsletter. So definitely subscribe to her.
Damn, Dave, I didn't even realize that. That would have been a great opportunity to promote MEC, because this is a really good article. And usually when I bring up an article on the podcast, it's because I just absolutely hated it. And this is a great one. Everything from, really specific stuff. Number 3 was stand out in feeds by turning the color up and sticking to a consistent palette. That's something I've really see very few artists do. And when I see them do it, it really makes their visual branding stand out. Number 5, participate in cultural discourse about topics you feel passionate about. I think a lot of artists want to avoid that. The majority of artists, when they get on social media, what do they want to talk about? Their music. What do they want to share? Links to their music. What do they want to ask people about? What they think of their music. All of that is really boring, and it's not going to get you anywhere. It's definitely not with the fans. that leads us into number 6, which is know your audience. What do they talk about? When are they most active? What has worked in the past? What never works? Constantly test and learn. I'm not going to run through the whole list, but these are really practical suggestions that not only help you engage with your fans, but these suggestions also lead to you knowing your audience, creating content that's engaging with your audience, and then you can take that and walk up to a brand partner and say, okay, this is what I can offer. What can you give me? Or this is what I want from you, and this is what I can provide. And there you go. But when I have these conversations with artists who say, yeah, it's impossible to stand out, you need a huge budget, you need a celebrity cosign, I don't see them doing any of this stuff on this list. I actually see very few. I don't do a lot of the stuff on this list, and I should. And so just looking at this list and knowing that lists such as these, I mean, this one stands out. So shout out to Amber Horsberg for writing a great list. But she's not the only, person creating good content like this that helps artists out there. It frustrates me. It really confuses me because I know you talk to artists all the time who will insist that the game is rigged against them. They can't win. Talented artists never win. Only artists with money, only artists with gimmicks, only artists with cosigns, only artists with ties to the lizard people on Venus's moon are the ones who get anywhere in the game. And I'm looking at this list thinking, well, they haven't anytime I check out some of these artists' social media, they're not doing any of this stuff.
Right. Well, I think the problem is when cats are thinking about standing out, they're thinking about like standing out in one video, like making one video go viral, as opposed to kind of setting like the palette or really setting your brand up and doing certain things to be more noticeable over time, right? I think that's really what we should be looking for, is kind of setting a foundation, setting a branding strategy, a content release strategy. Maybe people don't see the first post or the second post or even the 100th post, but over time, if you're consistently releasing quality content in a particular way, like people are going to catch notice of it. And it's just like, so Amber wants attention as well, and she does it by posting regular quality content. And not everybody's going to see her newsletter right now, but more people are going to read it. Just like Payne just caught wind of it, and he's like, wow, this is quality content. I'm probably going to subscribe to to her newsletter because it seems like she knows what she's talking about, right? It's not something that's going to go super viral right away. Maybe one of her newsletters does go viral, but when it does, it's gonna be more effective because she's put out tons of newsletters that are very helpful. And if you find out about the 1,000th newsletter, that means you have 999 newsletters that you can go back and read that are probably just as quality as the 1,000th one. And that's what artists need to be thinking about, the long term, and not try to just hit a grand slam every time, because you're probably going to swing and miss doing that.
So your opinion, Dame, is that not everybody is meant to be a professional musician. And to speak to that, we have to accept that not every artist at this moment, and as artists, we have to accept that we as artists at this moment might not be as talented or as unique as we think we are. And when you have these conversations with art, and granted, you're supposed to think you're the greatest artist on the planet. If you aren't convinced that you're good at what you do, how are you going to convince other people? And that confidence does matter. But
we should probably have another podcast just about that mindset, because I think that's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Should you have to think that you're the best artist on the planet to have a career in music? Or can you just be like, you know what? I know what I do. I have my lane. These are the people that rock with what I got going on. And this is how I'm going to set up shop.
Well, you should have confidence. Okay, granted. Yeah, I don't.
No, because a lot of people say that. A lot of people, especially in hip hop, because it's such a competitive genre, or it used to be, where you wanted to be kind of the best rapper or whatever. People have that mindset when they're like, hey, who's your top 5? And then the interviewer will be like, how come you don't have yourself in that list? You're not that confident in what you're doing. It's just expected that you have to have that mentality. But again, I don't want to derail this podcast. I just think it's an interesting.
You already have them. You already have, and I think there's a difference between thinking you're the best and saying it publicly. I think having confidence is great. But I personally, if I'm approached by a rapper, for example, and they say I'm the best, and I've had rappers do this, like, everybody you work with is trash, work with me. I'm instantly turned off. I don't ever want to talk to you again. But this does happen, so that's a situation of overconfidence, and then also just kind of being a dick. But people, there's a tactful way of being confident. You can accentuate the things that you're good at. I love my fans. I appreciate my fans. This is what I do for them. You can talk about that. You might be the best at fan engagement. You might be the best at, your stage show might be amazing. Talk about that. Saying you're the best, that's not very specific, and it just kind of makes you look like a fool, especially when you might not be the best. If you come into an arena where you've got people like Tech Nine and Royce the 5'9" and Elzai and Eminem and all these other rappers, and you say I'm the best rapper, you're not better than them. Stop it. So, and if you are, then you should probably show and prove rather than talk about it. But a lot of producers and musicians that I talk to say, well, I'm the best at what I do and I'm better than everyone in the industry, but I'm not winning in the industry. It's got to be rigged. And then I listen to the music, I'm like, okay, you're definitely not the best. Your quality doesn't even begin to match up with what's out there. And on top of that, your approach is terrible. And clearly you have an attitude problem, because you think that it's a given that just because you have a certain level of talent that things just are supposed to just fall at your feet. And so that's why when I look at articles like the one that Amber wrote, I'm like, damn, the information is out there. If you already think you're the best, just read these points and try to implement some of them and think, okay, I'm not doing that, but that's a good idea. I should try it. Don't look at that list and be like, man, I can't do that. I just need someone to drop $1 million on me, and then I'm going to be on.
Yeah, to me, man, I really don't like listening to like artist music. Like I people always want us to do like music reviews, do the MEC and stuff like that. And sometimes we entertain it just because people want to do it. But there is a huge disconnect between like where people think they are and where they really are. And I don't even claim to be some type of super genius A&R, but like a lot of artists' music is not where they think it is, right? And that to me is the problem, right? Like I've never met an artist that I felt was super dope that was putting out quality content that wasn't moving in the right direction.
Right.
Like if you're consistently putting out quality content that truly is something that resonates with people, then you're gonna see the numbers start to go up. I've never seen it just stay stagnant. So if it's not moving, I think that you just may not be as good as you think you are. Ultimately, that's probably the biggest problem, the content you're creating. And I hate to say good or bad because it's subjective. Artist subjective. There's a lot of music that I don't think is good that does well. But obviously your shit isn't resonating with people. So it's either the music itself or you're not getting it in front of the right people. There's only one of two things that could be going on.
And all of that is an easy fix. You just have to, read articles such as this one, really evaluate what it is that you're doing, get some outside opinions from people who aren't yes men and who aren't invested. I mean, sometimes you have to pay for that. You have to pay for an unbiased opinion. Get someone to evaluate your social media, get someone to really listen to your music and give an unbiased ear. Because some of us, one of the greatest talents, I think, as an artist is to step outside of yourself and outside of your personal connection to your art and see what's missing and see how effective what it is that you're doing and not personalize it. Because you have to step into the shoes of people who are buying your art, who are consuming your art. Because if you don't have people doing either of those things, then your whole foundation, is weak. And I personally think it's with all the saturation in the game right now, everybody's making music, everybody's making beats, everybody's rapping, everybody's has an album out. I personally think it's still pretty easy to stand out, not in the ways that you think. I'm not saying, light your hair on fire at every show and that's how you stand out. I just mean, when I look at that list of the article we were talking about, a bunch of those things aren't being done by the average artist. When I think about just how people approach, me or you when we're on the road, the approach and the energy that people have and the way they talk, there are very few people who stand out, even in memory, where I think, wow, I had a really great interaction with that person. Your attitude can really make you stand out in face-to-face interactions or on social media.
Just put out consistent quality music. You might not skyrocket out of here because you're going to have to do other things to market your music, but I think you would see growth, right? But I think artists need to leverage a lot of the techniques that are in Amber's newsletter and the stuff that we talk about, because other people are, and you're competing with other people. You're competing with other artists to get the attention of potential fans. And if you're not thinking about your brand, if you're not doing, Facebook advertising or thinking about your graphic design and putting out stuff regularly, I don't know how you expect to stand out. Like, a lot of artists just put too much faith in the music alone that it's just going to somehow take off. And that's just not the case. Unless you're consistently putting out really dope music, if you're some kind of, if you're on like Russ level quality music, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I've known artists that have been incredibly talented. Really talented, and you can have all the talent in the world, and if your approach isn't right, and if you're not framing that talent within good branding, it's not going to be effective. And that's reality, and that's something that we need to face. But the majority of the stuff we can do ourselves. We can start doing it, and we can identify what we can't do. For example, with my visual branding, if I know I can't take good photos, if I know I don't have a camera, then yeah, I might need to talk to a friend. I might need to hire somebody. But look at who your competition is. Who's doing it well? What are they doing? What are they doing that you're not doing? What resources do they have that you need? And just go down the list. Don't try to approach it all at once. But let me actually give you the name of this article so you can find it. It's 23 Ways to Improve Fan Artist Engagement on Social Media by Amber Horsberg. It just came out a couple days ago, and I recommend the article, definitely, no matter what level you're at. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff takes time, and a career in music is not a given. It's definitely not a given. I think that's this subconscious narrative that we've all accepted, even though we don't say it, even though we claim to know that this is going to take a lot of hard work. We still have this subconscious belief that if we put out some music that we think is dope, people will just flock to it, and money and fame will come along with that. And that's just not how things work.
It's actually for very few, and I know that I sound discouraging when I say this, but very, very few percentage of artists that are actually pursuing music as a career are going to be successful. Like, with as many artists as there's just not that many minutes in the day to hear all of that music. So you're competing with a shitload of people. And I know that sounds discouraging, but it's the reality of the situation. But it's also why I like to talk about things in the Music Entrepreneur Club that are going to benefit you in life, no matter what you decide to do, right? Even going back to this Facebook training, you learn how to master Facebook ads and learn how to use it for your music and your merchandise. And if at some point you stop doing music, you know how to run Facebook ads. So even if you start a juice company or you're selling couches or whatever, like you have a skill set now that it's applicable to any entrepreneurial venture. Same when we talk about other things we do in marketing, same with networking. These to me are life business skills, and that's why I really enjoy the approach that we take to this, and hopefully people are thinking that way as they're pursuing their career in music.
Well, let's zoom out for a second though, because like we said, the game is very saturated right now. Everyone's making music. But not everybody. I mean, think about how many rappers you know that even have tried using Facebook Business Manager. Very few. Think about how many rappers you know that sit around and think about color palettes for their Instagram account. Very few. So, yeah, it seems like it's impossible to stand out until you actually examine what it takes to stand out and realize that the vast majority of artists competing for the same space and competing for the same resources are not even trying to stand out, are not even examining their own brands in a critical way.
I mean, that's very true. I think, let's just say let's say if there was a million, and this plays back in their favor. So hopefully this is a little bit more positive given the discouraging comment I just made, a few minutes ago, because you're right. Like, let's just say that there's 10 million artists pursuing music. I would say, maybe 100,000 of them are pursuing it the right way, or 200,000. A small fraction of those people are really doing the things to give it a real shot. Right. And a small fraction of those people really understand what it takes or are willing to put in the hours necessary, both on the art side and the business side. So you can step out from this huge pack of people that say they want to be artists, if you're willing to do the things that we always talk about. So hopefully that's a little positive. Given how discouraging I sometimes sound and probably sounded, a few minutes ago.
No, I think it's absolutely encouraging. Check out that article, joinmusicentrepreneur.club.com. I didn't even realize that Amber Horsberg was a guest. Hopefully she comes back so I can catch the session. I think she has a lot of good insight. But yeah, don't get discouraged. Just get smarter. Just spend some time finding the resources and learning, because that's ultimately what's going to make you stand out from the crowd.
And on the positive side, like I mentioned a couple episodes ago, like now is the best time ever in the history of music to be a musician, because there's so many different revenue streams. Again, going back to the revenue mix, you might not be maybe your most successful revenue stream ends up being merch, and your music is just kind of promotion for the merch. That's okay. You're still living your dream, doing what you want to do, and you're selling your brand, your messaging through your music, but through your merchandise. Or maybe you're good at developing relationships, and you start placing a lot of music in television and film, and there's a shitload of content being created, given that we now have Netflix and Hulu, and BET is about to launch a subscription service, and Disney is about to launch a subscription service if they haven't already. Like, there's so much content being created, and music is in high demand for all of these different platforms. You just need to figure out how to get your music in there, develop the right relationships, make the right music, position yourself intentionally to capitalize on these placement opportunities or these sponsorship opportunities, because there is a lot of opportunity out there for music. So hopefully that's a little bit more of a positive note as well.
There you go. Super easy. We're ending it with Dame smiling. I think that's a good place to end. Appreciate everybody listening to us on Audio Mac, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, so forth. We'll be back for episode 16 next week. Peace.
Peace.